Hey folks, welcome back. In this section of the course, we've spent a good deal of time on Lambda, how it works, and how to configure and deploy Lambda functions. Now in this lesson, we're going to take a look at Lambda versioning. And it's pretty straightforward, and we'll be able to have a good grasp on Lambda versioning, both for the DevOps Pro exam and in the real world. In the DevOps doctrine, let's click on Lambda versioning. So for our Lambda functions, a good way to manage our code is to version our Lambda functions. And we can set it up in such a way that, again, we're following that software lifecycle, dev, test, prod, and we can actually publish one or more versions of our Lambda function. And as a result, again, we can have a development workflow. Most likely we'd start in dev, promote our function to test and or beta, and then promote it to production. But there are a lot of different ways you can go with that, and it's just good to have a solid fundamental understanding of Lambda versioning. Now, some key points. Again, you can publish one or more versions of your Lambda function. This is key. Each Lambda function has a unique ARN, and after you publish a version, it cannot be changed. Now, the latest version of a function is tagged as $latest, and we'll see some of this in action when we do the walkthrough here momentarily. Now, Lambda supports creating aliases for each Lambda function version, and an alias is basically a pointer to a specific Lambda function version. And again, each alias has a unique ARN. Now, here's a difference between aliases and versions. Aliases can be modified. So you can update an alias to point to a different version. An example would be, as you promote your functions to prod, if you update your function and promote that function to prod, you can just change your prod alias to point to this new prod function. So let's take a look at this in action. So in the management console, I'm in AWS Lambda. Let's go to functions. And really, we could use any function for an example of this versioning. I'll go ahead and pick my favorite, the AMI lookup. All right, so this is our AMI lookup Lambda function. And notice, there's its unique ARN. So right now, we just have one version of this. And let's just say, for example, that we had published this version to prod, and we have an alias pointing to this version. But let's say we introduce a new version and we're doing development on it. Well, our dev alias can point to our new version. Now, when we publish this new version, we'll have a version 2 sitting out here somewhere. And once we are ready for that to become prod, we can simply change our prod alias from this version 1 and point it to our new version 2. All right, so let's go back to the management console. And we have our Lambda function. Now let's just say that we make a minor change to it. And let's save this. Now let's go to Actions and note some of these options we have. Create alias, publish new version. All right, so we made an update. And we just did something simple, but it could be any change. Let's click Publish New Version. Publishing a new version saves a snapshot of the code and the configuration of the $latest version. And remember some of these points here. You can't edit the new version's code. Let's just say for version description, version 2, and click Publish. Now let's just say version 1 and click Publish. All right, so there's our new version. Now remember, we can't edit this version. All right, so let's go up here to versions. All right, so we have version 1 and version 2. Let's go back to this version 1. And basically, the only difference is this little sentence does not have a period. Let's go to version 2, and now we have 2 periods. Very minor change, of course, but just for demonstration purposes, we have different versions now. Now let's go to latest. So if we were going to make edits to this function, want to change the latest, it's pretty literal. the latest version of the function is tagged as latest. As you would expect, our latest version is version 2. We have the 2 periods in here. Now, conversely, let's say you have a problem in your latest version. Well, it's very simple to roll back. So you roll back to this version. Let's say you want this to be your prod version. You can change your prod alias to point to this new version. And we'll talk about aliases here momentarily. So let's do that now. So let's click on Actions and Create Alias. Let's just name it Production. And of course, right now we have 2 versions of this. And let's just say, for example, purposes that we found some issues with version 2. Well, let's make version 1 our production Lambda function. And again, this goes back to the same example. If we had our alias pointing to version 2, we could simply change it to version 1 if a problem arose. You can shift traffic between 2 versions based on weights that you assign. So think of blue-green testing, canary testing, weighted routing. That type of situation is what this is referring to for our Lambda function. So we only have 2 versions. If we plug in our second version here, up pops a weight, like again, sort of like weighted routing. So what if we wanted 10% of our traffic to go to version 2? Now, of course, we'd only do this if version 2 we were sure was functioning properly. So we'd have 90% going to version 1, 10% going to version 2. This is, again, sort of the canary testing approach. And let's go ahead and create. Now, let's say that version 2 is performing well. It's getting 10% of the traffic, and we've tested this for a while, maybe a couple days, and we're satisfied. We want to promote version 2 to production. Well, it's very simple. Remember, this is our production alias. So all we have to do is point our prod alias to version 2 instead of version 1. And we can do this right here. And we're happy with version 2. We want it to receive 100% of the traffic. Let's just clear this out. See how that worked? We just clear that out. Watch our percentages. They go away basically, which means that version 2 will get 100% of the traffic. So let's click Save, and there we go. Version 2 is now prod. And once we've set up our alias to point to a Lambda function that we want to be our prod, we're in business here. We can change this. We can create new versions of our Lambda function. We can set up our canary testing if we want to do it that way. Once we're satisfied, we can change our production alias to point to our new version and make it our production version. Our application is pointing to our production alias. The production alias is pointing to the version of our Lambda function that we want to be our production version. And of course, we can do the same thing with dev or test or beta. Same principles. So in this lesson, we took a look at Lambda versioning and Lambda function aliases to streamline our software development lifecycle. So thank you for joining me in this lesson, and let's move on to the next.